The year was 2002 and the FPS business was kinda booming. We already had tons of great shooters, Dooms, Quakes, all the build engine goodies such as Blood or Duke Nukem, Valve's goodies, and even more, way more legendary titles. Riding that hype train, three skilled game designers from Poland decided to create a small, independent studio called People Can Fly. Back then, Poland didn't have a lot of globally successful games under its belt, but I can at least mention Gorky 17, a game co-created by none other than the founder of People Can Fly, whose name I'm not willing to pronounce for your convenience. These guys had a bold idea: let's bring some serious competition to shooter genre, a bit of that Slav jank magic, though leaning more on the Slav than the jank. They said, we're gonna make our own Doom with blackjack and hookers. So they started to gather ideas. Where exactly do you take inspiration from in the early 2000s? Let's see your options. Take some spooky demon hunting with nauseating gore from Doom. Throw in high-octane, adrenaline-fueled Quake chaos.
Excellent.
Top it off with a pinch of circle-straafing, arena-style combat. What do you get? A game that could easily hold its own in any era, but had the unfortunate timing of competing with Doom 3 and Half-Life 2 in the same year. And yet, despite the odds, this game managed to carve out the name for itself. It holds an impressive 81% score on Metacritic, with some reviewers even daring to rank it above those two behemoth competitors. And the accolades didn't really stop there. In 2005, the world's biggest professional FPS league made Painkiller an official tournament title. Fatality himself clinched the New York finals playing a debut game from a small Polish studio. I mean, how's that for a flex? What's even more interesting, the devs didn't take the path of licensing one of the many reliable engines available at the time. No, they went all in and built their own, the Pain engine, and it actually turned out to be an absolute beast. Now, I have to tread lightly here. The game is already 21 years old. I might say it's old enough to make OnlyFans content, but in some cases it could already be into real estate investments. This is one dusty title to uncover, and despite all the positive feedback, it has its flaws. So the question remains, can I hate the game that most people call underrated? Well, the game has its shtick, even two of them actually, but the second is coming a bit later. During the gameplay you can complete a challenge tied to each level. If you do it properly, you'll be given a nice fat buff in the form of a tarot card. There are two kinds of those: silver, passive ones, and gold, activated for a limited time with a button. Some silver cards are blessings, like double the ammo pickups or souls providing more health, but others not so much. If it comes to gold ones, they add features to your time-limited rampage mode, usually mixing slow motion with variety of quad damage and increased bullet resistance. The game gives you this evil-looking board where you can place your buffs. There are 2 slots for silver cards and 3 for gold. If you want to change your loadout, that's gonna cost you. There is an in-game gold currency which can be easily picked up during your demon carnage. If you're broke, you're ultimately stuck with current selection until you pile up your gold once again. This becomes important on trauma difficulty, where you are forced to adapt your skill set to specific levels. And speaking of difficulty, let's make some rules here, okay? Considering I smoke compulsively every time I get angry and all my manual skills vaporized a long time ago right after the enemy territory era, I decided to go with a not so punishable playthrough, picking the Nightmare difficulty. Don't get confused by my voice, I was very much alive when Splash Damage was making maps for Wolfenstein.
Disarm the dynamite!
The last thing is to address the elephant in the room. There is a second gimmick in this game, and depending on your viewpoint, it may actually sink the title entirely. Painkiller is not a regular FPS game. It's an arena shooter, which basically means you'll be moving from place to place, mauling hundreds of enemies. Seems fun, and it is, but there's nothing beyond it. There are no keys, no mazes, no puzzles, and no mysteries. The arrow shows you the way, you follow it, the arena locks in, enemies spawn, you kill all of them, and then repeat the sequence. That's it. We all know who's to blame for this. But the idea of horde fighting is not entirely damned in the industry. I'll get to this one by the end of the episode, but this is the foundation of the game and you have to remember there's no way around it. There are 5 chapters in Painkiller, each of them starts with a cutscene and ends with a distinct boss. And having this said, let's meet Daniel. They just couldn't help themselves.
We sure picked a great day to celebrate my birthday.
It's just a little rain. It'll dry.
This is bad.
Rain. It'll dry.
What?
Painkiller has a story. I would call it bare minimum or simple justification for this shooter take off. This is Samuel, our new employer.
Here, take this.
What's this?
This is who you have to kill.
4 guys? That's it?
Oh, get used to these faces. They all look high as a kite.
I just have to hunt down these 4 guys and that's it. I finally get out of here. I finally get to see her again.
Yes, but it won't be that easy.
Long story short, Catherine, Daniel's wife, went straight to heaven while Daniel now has to suck dicks in hell. Or rather, in limbo.
But why?
Kill the generals, and Lucifer's armies will retreat.
So Lucifer has an army with 4 generals being marked with a hit contract by the Heavens Intelligence Agency?
Your time has come. Take it or leave it.
We don't have time for this crap. The game obviously starts in a graveyard, which nicely sets a theme for the story. Your first weapon is this, a grinder from a hell that goes through early enemies like a hot butter knife. It's actually called Painkiller. Even though you won't be using this frequently, the grinder has 2 alternative fire modes, which are cool but mostly useless. They are fun though. The grinder pales quickly in comparison to the thing right around the corner. This.
This is a shotgun, so?
If I had to come up with a scale where one of the sides is represented by an all-time favorite super shotgun from Doom 2 and the other one is obviously occupied with a failed genetic experiment called Doom's Free Shotgun, it would be somewhere around here. It's quite powerful and will become a backbone of your future slaughter. On top of that, it can project a freezing beam which keeps this gun relevant even in the later stage of the game. Painkiller quickly exposes you to one of the core principles, soul harvesting. Every enemy leaves this shiny sphere after its death. Each of those restore your health by a tiny bit. Different foes leave different souls. The harder to kill it, the more valuable soul you receive. There will be moments when pushing forward is your only option to survive thanks to these drops. It's a nice little feature that encourages players to be more aggressive. Harvesting souls additionally triggers a demon mode, which allows you to insta-kill every enemy in sight for a few seconds. It's another rampage mode, but this time on steroids. The drawback is you cannot trigger it on demand, you have to watch closely the soul counter. It kicks in when you reach 66. Time for Atrium Complex. The first act is the only one which keeps sort of natural progression between levels. So going from graveyard to some kind of monastery, then catacombs and a cathedral at the end. It's almost like Painkiller tries to put some environmental storytelling, but in the greater scope it doesn't, and you'll soon realize it's leaning towards interesting but still randomized maps. Anyway, the level slowly introduces Painkiller's favorite set pieces, explosive elements placed strategically to maximize your fun, and it's so goddamn cool. Devs definitely had a sense of humor, and they placed multiple booby traps along the way. Well, this one's on me, wonkers. The next one is Catacombs. I have nothing to say about this one except it's dark and I hate it. It's not difficult, it's just dull. But there is something worth mentioning here. This, a stake gun. From now on, it fills the slot of Quake's railgun. Most enemies will die from a single hit, triggering a nice pin to the wall effect, which once again is a cool feature that makes this game distinct. You just have to learn to aim with a slight of a correction. On top of this, the stake gun has an alternative fire like other weapons. What is that? You guessed, it's a grenade launcher from a stake gun. Occasionally you'll meet a mini-boss. You see, Painkiller likes to create puzzle bosses. That's the only thing in the game requiring any other ability than being trigger happy. The dude is invincible, and I realized that because no one takes that many grenades to the face. It took me some time to figure this out, but it turns out this guy has to beat Dusk Till Dawn in order to complete the level. Cathedral is the last level before the first main boss. As soon as I heard the ambient sound of this map, it reminded me of something. I feel like this is the place where Painkiller experience really takes off. It has been created for monumental structures sporadically populated with giant bosses, who I have to admit solidify the feeling of fighting with something more powerful than ordinary mobs. These will be the money shots of the game, and here comes the first teaser. It's around that moment where I thought I might have made a mistake picking the Nightmare difficulty instead of Trauma. Anyway, we're committed to this. Time for the Necrogiant, the first general on a hit list. Even though upcoming bosses require uncovering some weird way to successfully deal damage to them, the first one is hit them hard with everything you got, boss. It's not a difficult fight, you just need to keep your distance with the trigger pulled down all the way. There is one attack that can cause trouble though. It's the tornado, which usually ends up like this. Yeah, I know you could get him cheap with the right card selection, but hey, I forgot about them, so we did it like men.
Ever wonder why there are graves in a place like this? Easy now. My name is Eve.
Good for you.
Well, that was mean.
What do you want?
I was told you're trying to hunt down Lucifer's generals and destroy his armies. Put that weapon down. I'm here to help. We don't have time for games, Daniel. You can feel I'm human.
Can you?
And I'm telling you, your map is no longer correct. Give it to me. Yeah. See, this horde has moved from here to somewhere up here.
Okay, let me spare this for you. So Eve wants to help us because she knows where the other generals are. However, her name is Eve, and the later chapters will become very much biblical, if you know what I mean.
I know this place. I was among the first to notice the armies moving in. But obviously...
But maybe she can please tell me why am I here.
As for why you're here, I can't answer that. The secret must be in your past.
This is useless.
Good luck.
I have intentionally skipped listing specific enemies in the first chapter because they were mostly cannon fodder, occasionally having some quirks like the Devil Monk, who can slow you down and make your fights much harder. Well, this time it's different. Let me introduce Hellbikers. This is the first enemy who was able to whoop my ass randomly. These greaseballs have chain guns and they are as close as possible to be a hit scanner without actually being one. I call this a fan act because it feels like the devs are not holding our hand anymore. The first level is prison, and we're jumping into more casual landscapes. I like it, this is fun. Look what that thing is. Do you recognize it? It has something to do with a British intelligence agent and a guy stealing a famous 1967 Mustang. Jesus, that's a deep cut.
I'm not gonna ask again. Don't do anything stupid. No one has to die here.
You remember the barrels? They were upgraded to unpredictable gas-powered missiles. And they suck. At this point, I'm not even sure if it was a glitch. So now the level is opera, and they brought ninjas. That's exactly what I told you about Painkiller having a creative ADHD. That's what happens when you throw everything you got at the wall, and apparently everything sticks. They are once again a cannon fodder, but with range attacks this time. Mauling them feels fun though. we already had ninjas, so it's time for mutilated gimp spawning headcrabs from Half-Life. It gets even weirder later. I mean, who doesn't like Jack Nicholson? And we're back to Spooky. Welcome to the Asylum. By that time I decided to complete some challenges in the game. This one requires using only the grinder throughout the level, so I tried my chances. For me, that was the weakest map in this chapter. It feels claustrophobic, which was probably the idea for this map, but Painkiller for me was always about the space and messy crowd fighting. I have to admit, there are two kinds of enemies here that freak me out every time. Fellows walking on the ceiling are one thing, but the ultimate freak is this: the Freak. That's his name, and his electrified version kills instantly. From Asylum to Snowy Bridge, the game is getting back on the rails. It's open space once again, and these are the moments when it's glorious. Unfortunately, the ninjas found the way out of the opera. I think we're getting more cartoony here, so now we're having red gas canisters, placed once again extremely conveniently. Can't get enough of this. The level has a challenge of finding all secrets out. I've never been a secret guy, but I tried harder this time. You see, Painkiller sometimes forces you to think a bit outside the box. It's cool, but I spent way too much time looking for those hidden stashes on the map. Fuck! And another twisted weapon, Electrodriver, my least favorite equipment from the arsenal. Primary mode spits out shurikens. Well, of course it does.
Can you see it?
The alternative fire electrocutes, which is fine when fighting in close combat. You won't be seeing me using this a lot cause it's slow and pretty lame. This one I really like. It's a Lovecraftian town with a brownish Quake vibe and my favorite track of the game. It's a shoulder map, mostly populated with zombies and coffins full of gold. I feel like the stay gun fits the vibe perfectly. We are here introduced to the first flying enemy, the Witch. Unfortunately, she's not a threat. Unlike the leper monk, who is actually able to deal some damage, he leaves a red soul restoring massive 6 HP. He still doesn't contribute to any considerable danger though. After cleansing the village, it's time to confront the Swamp Thing. This is our second general. Remember when I mentioned puzzle bosses? It took me many attempts to understand what's happening here. You see these gas bubbles? You have to shoot them at exact moment when this puke dumpster passes by. That's the only way to get his health down. Now, the Fart Master has a few tricks up his sleeve. Projectiles are easy to dodge, but as usually there's an attack a little more tricky to decode. This one. If you get him to the second stage, there's even more of these tentacles. It takes a half of my life every time I'm being smashed, so essentially I can only screw this once before reloading. Once he has his pants down, it's time to fill him with lead. There's plenty of references in the game. Do you recognize that tree? 'Cause I do.
Tree of the Dead.
Anyway, we're gonna speed it up.
Eve, this is Asmodeus. Asmodeus, Eve.
So, Asmongold is Daniel's friend. He's here because the story needed a twist. He's a demon who got befriended by Daniel and now he's a double agent.
He'll know where the generals are hiding.
So, how exactly do you two know each other?
A while back, I heard what sounded like an unusual
I mean, he's clearly British. It's a universal sign for villain.
engine. Impressed that he had the skills and strength to defeat 4 demons at once, I decided to help him recover.
Listen, these cutscenes are here only because one of the executives said we cannot have a game consisting only of maps filled with monsters.
They moved here, near the train station.
See? I told you he'd know where they are. Thank you, my friend. I'll see you again soon.
Time for Act 3. It is the best chapter of the game, and if I had to pick one part of Painkiller to highlight the gameplay and overall atmosphere, I think it would be this one. So, new enemies are coming. These are a little bit sleazy. These are their names, and they always work together. You get the idea. In this level, you get this. The devs tried to surprise the player with many creative designs, but this is what Jeff Goldblum was talking about in Jurassic Park, a result of a one-night stand of a rocket launcher and a chain gun. The most evil crossbreed you could ever think of. I've never checked the DPS of this monstrosity, but it feels like the ultimate badass.
I am the ultimate badass.
See for yourself. This is the last gun you'll find on your way, and probably you think, is that it? But if you look at the combined firepower of different modes, you get an extremely satisfying arsenal. This was actually the developer's idea to reduce the number of guns and significantly ramp up their usability. I already referred to weakest enemies as cannon fodder multiple times, but here you will meet the literal one, the undead soldiers. There's way more of them in comparison to other foes, they are aggressive and they will be doing the bayonet rush on you constantly. And as for real trench fighters, they will use nerve gas on you. The next stop is Abandoned Factory, another big level. A lot of open space and a lot of these guys. I have to make a quick statement about the difficulty of the game. You see, I never intended to do all challenges and get all the cards. I occasionally picked ones that felt interesting while still having fun in the game. By this level I gathered not so many of them, and they already can make this game way too easy. Sure, there are fragments where I'm getting pissed off and reload multiple times, but so far I was able to rock my way through without having any specific strategy. I got 2 silver cards that are more than sufficient to keep me warm and cozy throughout the whole game. Well, you can ask, then why don't you switch to trauma mode and start once again? You see, Painkiller took a weird approach of tying specific levels to the difficulty. If I didn't select Nightmare, whole chapter 5 would be gone. Anyway, the carnage intensifies and there's enough souls here to morph into demon at least 2 times. Check it out. The level is not complicated. Being honest, it's almost a straight shot from start to end, but if you like the unprecedented violence, I got something for you. Now, the military base. If I had to pick the best map in the game, I would be considering this and City on Water from the 5th act. As you can imagine, the undead soldier supply here is definitely not at risk. Wait a second. What? There's even a rocket silo here, where I was able to find a secret just because my movement is more frantic than Harrison Ford in Roman Polanski's movie. Strange. I'm sorry, that was the last one for this episode. The level is going to finally give your rocket launcher a run for its money. They brought artillery, tanks and a lot of open space. About this guy with the flamethrower you've seen already a couple of times, I hate him. He's tanky and requires different methods of killing, which always slip from my mind, and I end up hammering him like a caveman with the gun, which obviously I am. The showdown of this level brings it to the tank battle. Now guess, what can you find in the very last hangar? Well, of course it's a flying saucer. It's Painkiller. There's no 4th level on this difficulty, so that means we're about to face the 3rd general, a guy with a hammer. His hammer is the answer. It's the only place where bullets can cause damage. That's not the greatest puzzle to solve. Your enemy here is not his attack, but the fucking rubble blocking your way and occasionally crushing your head. He even has a second stage, but it's just him being upset after losing his hammer.
You're progressing well.
I want answers.
Daniel, even the devs don't have those.
What, you think this is funny? You think this is a joke?
I've come to tell you that some of the demonic hordes have moved north.
I got word of a settlement that needs our help.
I know where they are. Eva's pointed me in the right direction.
Alistair is Lucifer's right-hand man, his premier general. This isn't something to be taken lightly. He is extremely powerful and extremely deadly. Give me the scroll. We believe he is somewhere around here.
The fantasy chapter starts with the castle. That was probably another idea on the developer's bingo card. Jesus, they got dogs now? Not much happens really here, except we are introduced to the Executioner, which is supposed to be a beefy opponent, but the poor guy usually has bad luck bumping into me when I'm holding a shotgun loaded with nitrogen. There's another enemy here, the armless skeleton, which is not a problem, but constantly reminds me of the Dark Soul catacombs. Yuck. It gets a little more exciting when I drop to the dungeon, but overall, meh. The next stop, the palace. This starts a Middle East theme. The low-tier enemies now are Arabian warriors and Templars, which makes me think this place is Jerusalem? Explosive barrels are back, but that's not the only thing causing a mess here. Now we've got fireworks. That's the moment I realized this bunny hop grunt makes me lose my mind. I mean, that's completely normal, but this map forces you to traverse open spaces constantly. After chapter 4, I had this sound effect imprinted on my brain. The game suddenly decided to throw in some environmental enemies, which I always liked as a concept, even though it's an extremely divisive topic. However, I know one game that could have potentially tipped the balance on my side. There's a little surprise at the end of the level. These regular Templars become elite ones. But what surprised me more was the fact I was short of exactly one soul at the time to put these guys out of misery instantly. Just kidding, I got him. Last step before Alistair's hideout. Babel. The chapter intensifies here. We've got more enemies, a mini-boss and some nice structures here leading up to the Big Dick himself. You have already heard most of the tracks in the score, so it's a good place to mention it. I believe it has been created by two guys, whose name once again I'm not going to pronounce, cause, you know, it's Polish. You never know whether it's a name or a Wi-Fi password. It's not bad, sometimes really groovy, some tracks are mediocre, but there are other great ones as well, with meaty powerful riffs. They remind me a bit of Quake 2 soundtrack, which was cool as well. I even tried to look this up on the web and found this, which bulletproofs my theory about the score being at least fine. Cancer. There's even this track, which honestly sounds very much like early Rammstein. Just imagine the vocals. Maybe not that much, but you get my point. God, what is that? Nice drop, only slightly retarded. These are the elite executioners, another type of enemy being essentially bulletproof until you hit the right spot, in this case their beer belly. At this stage I started running low on health and weapons, which actually was a refreshing feeling after I blasted through the previous episode, of course, to a certain point. Oh, contraptions, how Tomb Raider-ish. Maybe not. Okay, let's get this level done. Now, the creme de la creme, Alastor. This stage covers the majority of depths in the run. I have never thought this dickhead before, so I had absolutely no idea what to expect. Spoiler alert, the fight with Alastor has a few stages. The first one is a walk in a park. The dude shows up with a well-telegraphed attack, makes a drive-by and disappears for a few seconds. You need to get his HP all the way down and that's it. The problem is this fall. The floor will collapse a few more times during this fight, and even if this was not a problem, the second fall will become the problem, since my health is getting slimmer every second. For a long time I couldn't figure out the right strategy for his stomp walk, but I think the key is to hold a medium distance while changing the angle constantly. Now here comes the puzzle of the fight. Alastor can heal himself with the help of the statues around him. You cannot hurt them unless they are actively healing this dingleberry. So the plan is simple.
It's Asmodeus!
Oh, our British fellow, who's definitely not a traitor.
We got a problem. We think Lucifer is on his way.
You're not hiding in this world, are you?
No, not exactly.
What are you doing here then?
I dig graves.
Same energy.
You picked the wrong side, my friend. The wrong side. You know, I didn't want to reveal myself to you, and I thought I wouldn't have to. But it seems that Alistair did not do what he was told. Apparently, I was right. I told him many times it was way too...
Really? Come on.
I told him many times it was way too early. If I can't have heaven, I'll take something else. This should tide me over for now.
Where are they?
He's taken her back to hell.
What?
You know where we're going now? No, 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 no. The YouTube bots are not welcome here. Remember when I told you about the best level in the game? That's the one. City on water. Right up front, there's many things happening here. First of all, this is a journey to hell, and we start in Venice, which is odd enough, even for Painkiller. Secondly, the level is set in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by water, which is another neat idea and makes this map very unique. The third thing is recreating famous buildings. This is Palazzo Vecchio from Florence, so you can already imagine the devs will be mixing everything in one pot. Is Italy a gateway to hell? The bikers are back, but this time we have all the guns in the world. Oh my god, yes! History break once again. That's St. Mark's Basilica. Here comes the most famous enemy of all, the Skull. He resembles Ghost Rider and hits hard from a double-barrel shotgun. He has a massive health pool as well. I guess he's supposed to be almost like a mirrored protagonist, a badass from hell. They can be a threat when spawning in groups, but a quick rocket treatment solves the problem. I mean, spawning bikers on explosive barrels is peak Painkiller. Where's my soul? What? Alrighty, time for dogs. This map has its own reskinned version of bikers, but it's still a bunch of itchy trigger finger fatties, and they're drunks. I wasn't prepared for this kind of start. Jesus. It's a fun level. Cranes, construction sites, trains, ships, perfect places for a 2004 virtual reality slaughter. One of the worst things about this design is that your current arena stays locked until you wipe out every single enemy, and when the AI is good and the level design is smart, you don't have to roam back and forth in search of that one single dickhead being lost or stuck in the corner. It happens way more often than you might think. Jesus, can you die, please? The level ends on a ship and, as usually, it's a bloodbath. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the last level of the game before fighting the Lucifer himself. We're back to the spooky and mythical, which seems to be a proper vibe for what we are about to see. We're back with monks, witches, mages and all that magical crap we left behind. Oh, a chalice! This looks like a real gravestone. So there are red stars scattered across the map, and I wasn't really able to uncover their purpose. I believe there are 2 outside the monastery and 3 inside. My web search told me it's necessary to collect them in order to progress. Anyway, let's grab them. Nice drop, but I cannot go without triggering this, can I? Bit too early, but I got my backup. We did it! The final showdown. There's a disclaimer here, I had no idea what would be the course of action in this fight. I might have broken the game because the result is see for yourself. Okay, so ghosts now. This is it. What the... That was underwhelming. No, seriously, was that the final boss? He's really gone. It's a pity, but we won't leave it with our stomachs empty, I guess. The fight was a huge letdown, but we might assume the cherry on top was not supposed to be the battle itself, but the set pieces the developers prepared for us. This was supposed to be Lucifer's Dominion, the final outpost, and fortunately people can fly gave up on rivers of lava and boiling tar. The map exists in perpetual time freeze in the middle of a war. Not a specific war, but every war throughout centuries. Obviously, it's a well-known metaphor, war is hell, but spend a second to appreciate the landscape. It's probably the most thoughtful design of the game, and it can surely send chills down the spine. Surprise!
Alistair, I thought I killed you.
Killed me?
When I'm finished here, I'll make my way back up there.
When you're finished here? You'll never be finished here. I'm going to torture you for eternity. I'm going to enjoy watching you scream with pain as I slowly gut you. Don't worry, you won't feel much.
That doesn't make any sense, does it?
Bring it on!
Good old Matrix credit punch. Pretty cool, huh? And a nice sequel bait. Alright, so why did Painkiller never break its ceiling? People Can Fly at one point started talking about the curse of 85, meaning no magazine would rate their game higher than that. If you're looking on the surface, Painkiller has everything. Graphics are great for its era, gameplay is fun, there's plenty of monsters, unique maps, and pretty decent tracks in the score. Everything checks out. The problem with Painkiller is that the game feels pointless. It has a story and you progress through the levels, but because of being an early single-player arena shooter, it feels more like a tech demo encapsulated in a digestible story package. I will make some enemies here, and for those, please remember I had great fun playing the game and it's definitely an awesome title, But if anyone ever said, this gets boring after a while, I can relate to this. For a long time, this was a reality of arena shooters for me, since there was no unpredictability of multiplayer games. This formula in 2000s was not extremely appealing to me. I mentioned in the beginning that this idea is not entirely damned in the industry today, thanks to games like Doom Eternal, which deep inside is an arena shooter, but the variety of tricks, unique mechanics, rich story, complex gameplay, environmental clues, the lore, and extreme immersion make this inherent vice of moving from arena to arena disappear. In 2004, this was not the case. And if the ultimate question is, do I hate Painkiller? The answer is, I don't, but it's completely understandable to do so. And this is the deal breaker. This is the curse of 85. This is why 2004 in FPS is mostly remembered as the Half-Life 2 and Doom 3 year. And there is another lesson coming from this story. I'm not playing Serious Sam anytime soon.